All right, let's get to this last topic here. And the show's already gone way longer than I expected. And this topic might go for a while. So let's dive into it, man. The Purdy hate. Why don't you tell me what you're seeing? And I'll kind of play off of that. But you wanted to talk about some of the hate from the national media. Obviously, there's at least one person, one gentleman in the chat that wants to know if I still hate Brock Purdy with everything that I have. So I'll talk about that a little bit as well, but go ahead and talk about some of the things that you're seeing from the national media.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously the national media has there's 4 teams left, so every team is going to be nitpicked, and that's the par for the course. But the amount of and there's hate, there's criticism, and then there's hate and disrespect, and I think the amount of stuff that leans more into hate and disrespect that I'm seeing for a guy like Purdy, who's in his second year as a starter, has had 2 opportunities in the playoffs, and taken the team back to back years in NFC Championship games. Has not lost a playoff game, Jesse, that he's been healthy, that he hasn't like lost his elbow in. Right? He's 3-0 in games that he's been able to play, start, and finish healthy. And to me, it's just ironic, or it's just weird that last year he was kind of the darling, and it was the underdog story, and oh my god, the 7th-round draft pick in his rookie season is able to take his team and have all of these great stats, and the team is kind of doing so well under him. And then he comes back this season in his second year, first year as a full-time starter, and I think elevated his game. He was in the MVP conversation all the way until that Baltimore game. Got this team to even better than they were last season, and the number 1 seed. Went in, and even though he had a difficult game, answered some questions that the national media has been putting out there. Can he lead a game-winning drive when it mattered, and all these types of things? And it's still, let me take every opportunity to talk about what he isn't, and keep talking about who he isn't, and how he's the 8th ranked quarterback, and now how he's the worst quarterback. And Ryan Clark is the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life, is try to put Brock Purdy in the same category as, Allen and Mahomes and Lamar and all this thing. It's just like, I've never seen it, man. And it's wild to me that it's just taking a life of its own. So I was just wondering why you feel like it, and I have some thoughts as far as why I think it is as well.
Well, first of all, I mean, I think that there is. I want to go back to something early that you said, and I want you to clarify for me what your definition is, and then we can go off that and kind of move forward. But you talked about the difference between hate and criticism. Because to me, I think this is where fans get very, very territorial and confused. I think they take hate or criticism and they bundle it all up, and it's all just hate. Or they don't listen to a full take from somebody. They just say, oh, they said this, so they hate them. And it's like, well, there were so many things that they said after that. If you would just listen, like take the whole take for what it is, and then come up with an opinion. And I think that there's a fine line. So you give me your fine line between criticism and hate.
I think hate is when you're making absolute statements without evidence necessarily to prove it, right? I think you've been somebody who's been very consistent on, you don't judge a quarterback till year 3, right?
But I do have opinions. Sure, and I'll go into those in a minute.
But you give them, but you're not putting a quarterback in a box till after that 3rd season, because
for sure
there's levels. The amount of people that are already saying the 49ers cannot win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy. the 49ers weakest link is Brock. All of these like absolutes, like he's the worst quarterback in the playoffs. Like these types of things to me is hate, because it's easy to point to the film, point to the stats to disprove a lot of these takes. However, it's like, hey, you don't know football if you believe that this quarterback is actually good. And that to me is hate, when it's like, dude, that's I think where it is, versus criticism, which is like, hey, he struggles in the rain, or he's, he hasn't shown the ability that when he plays bad that he can fix it, or sometimes he makes throws that can lead to interceptions and things. Like criticizing actual play, I think is different from then extrapolating that to be like a character flaw, or this guy can never do this in his second year. Like to me, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I forget what her name was, the executive or whatever, the ex-executive for the Raiders.
Yeah, I don't know the name.
I thought that was definitely over the top, right? Like, what? Wait a minute. Well, first of all, I was offended that you were calling guys like Goff and Baker Mayfield the elite. Like, let's start there. That offended me. All right. And then to say that they're elite, and then Purdy's like not on their level somehow. That one was like, really? That's okay, I guess. Like, that's a bit over the top. So anyways, I think I didn't break down Ryan Clark's comments. I saw like a brief thing. I kind of retweeted it or whatever. Anytime I see like news or whatever, I'll just kind of retweet it, like if it's a big national thing. But he the way I understood that anyways is that, and I think a lot of people feel this way as well. I know I feel it at the local level, but it's interesting to hear, because the way that I took Ryan Clark's comments, and I've heard Nick Wright talk about this as well, there's almost a pressure. 49er fans put so much pressure on these people, to where they feel like, God, it's just not worth it to say anything else, because the things that'll come my way if I have an opinion other than going with the flow here it's just not worth it. So I'm going to go with the flow. And yes, he's an MVP, and yes, he's a top 5 quarterback, and yes. And that's the way I took what Ryan Clark said, because the way I understood it is Ryan Clark basically was saying like, listen, all year long, I've had to like say that this guy's these things, and I didn't believe it in my heart, but I went along with the flow, which is weird in itself. Like, just stand on, especially Ryan Clark. Like, he always stands on his own 2 feet, but it felt like in this moment, for whatever reason, he didn't when it came to his opinion on Brock Purdy. It's like, just stand on it. If you don't believe it, it's okay. Like, you don't have to go with the flow. But then he also, I believe, said that he does think he's a good quarterback. His hate was that he doesn't think he's on the level of Mahomes, Allen, and Lamar. And pretending as if he is was hard for him to do. I guess where I get confused is, how is it hateful to say that Brock Purdy's not on the level of these guys? Like, what is the hate in that comment? Because the way that I see it is, I'm looking at Brock Purdy, who was the last pick in the draft. Okay. Everybody got it wrong on Brock Purdy, because he wouldn't have been the last pick in the draft if they didn't. So literally everybody in this chat, every fan across the league, everybody's gotten it wrong. Right? Like, I try to pat myself on the back. I'm like, hey, I had a 3rd round grade on him. I was wrong, because I should have had a 1st round grade. Like, my 3rd round grade was better than 7, but it was still wrong. He's a 1st round quarterback the way that he's played, right? So he's exceeded all the expectations, and even the fact that he is in the same stratosphere as these names should be complimentary. It's like, oh my God, like, you're talking about Brock Purdy with these elite names that have been in the league for years and have been getting it done for years. The fact that it's even a conversation, whether a silly one or not, When was the last time you heard anybody say, do you think Kirk Cousins is as good as Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen? And no, never. You've never heard those questions. You've never once heard that. And Kirk Cousins, by all measures, has had a hell of a career. Go look at the numbers Kirk Cousins put up. All right. Go look at what he did to the 49ers this year without his top receiver. Kirk Cousins is a very, very good player. He's never been mentioned with those guys.